These awards have no meaning. When I enter my classroom and I come out, if my children say that was a fantastic class, I believe that is the reward a teacher should get.
We are right now in an era of institutional revolution where a lot of changes should be accepted. I do, you do, we do.
This profession needs to be granted the status of a big profession placed on a pedestal in the society.
Do they really invest time in building the skills of the teachers? If that could be done, I think that will give a lot of solution to most of the things that we are facing.
There's so much that we can do by observing the teacher, mentoring the teacher, coaching the teacher. Thereby, we can improve their performance.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, sir, for the wonderful beginning, wonderful start to the day. It's kind of made me very, very nervous. Also, I'm sharing stage with 4 luminaries. So it's my honor and privilege. And thank you, Vish and Pritika, for having me here to moderate this session. All right. So let's start. Ms. Vasanthi Thiagarajan, what do you think are the core competencies teachers in this new age of learning must possess?
Good morning to one and all present here. In my school, basically, we greet everyone with one term called Vande Gurum. We coined it for our school because we strongly believe there is no guru as such. The child teaches us a lot of things. I have my guru sitting right in front of me. I don't know, coincidence, last 2 sessions in Kasargod, he was speaking before me, and then I get tongue-tied. But I know my guru will never judge me. He will encourage me, and whatever I am today, I attribute to him. Luckily, I didn't hear my profile reading because, as sir has always taught me, these awards have no meaning. When I enter my classroom and I come out, if my children say that was a fantastic class, I believe that is the reward a teacher should get. I don't believe a Fulbright award, a national award can speak. It has to be my work every day, every time. So coming to your question about teacher competencies, it's a good one to begin with after hearing this on NEP. I personally do not subscribe to an academic competency per se, because anyways, teachers do have their educational qualification, as sir said. To me, what is more important is the skill, value, and attitude of a teacher. If those competencies can be developed by a school, by the principal of the school, because we are role models for our teacher, can we walk the talk all the time? So what's my attitude towards student learning? What is my attitude towards learning? What is my attitude towards improvement of my own competencies? If I do that, then the rest of the school will follow suit. So would my children. And I therefore very strongly bet on this, that we need to focus on values, attitudes, and skills. Could be communication skills, collaborative skills, right? Whatever we do, critical thinking, or all of the life skills that we speak about, if the principal is able to lead by example, then I think the academic competencies, which anyway will be an appendage to the teacher's name, would get strengthened if these are actually focused upon. So I would bat for values, skills, and attitudes. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So, Ms. Hamsa Priya, the teaching is essentially a performance, like he also brought out. One can be very insipid in the classroom, or one can have an excellent, like ma'am also said, a performance. I mean, when you go into the classroom, you should be able to capture the imagination of the student rightly. Okay? It's very important. So do you agree with this or disagree? And how important is it for the teacher to be constantly working under this expectation that is the performance? And yeah, so what do you think we will have to inject in the teacher to be able to make her a good performer in the classroom?
The teacher as a performer.
Teacher, yeah. Teaching, yeah.
Before I go on to answer your question, Asha ma'am, I must thank Karadipat Vishwanathan sir and Chennai Sahodya for giving me this opportunity to learn from all the curriculum leaders who are present here for this session. Thank you very much. And as Madam asked, the teacher performance, you're talking about it. It is once again talking about the competency of the teacher in the classroom. So many a times when we conduct interviews also with teachers, we find out what they know about the subject. But working with teachers for this many, I worked with teachers for the past 27 years, okay? So in this 27 years, I've understood it is not knowing, but what are all the things that you can really do is what is competency for me. So in this regard, a teacher needs to be constantly, like, the teacher knows already a lot of things. And as Sir spoke about each school having a culture, you know, as Madam started her session also, she said, we greet, this is the way we greet in our school. The school also has a culture. The teacher already knows, you know, things by her school education, her exposure in a college. And with this culture that we have constantly, I feel that the teacher performance has to be improved in the classroom by giving a lot of inputs from the principal. Principal, as we consider them as pedagogical leaders, not as good managers, as you said.
Happy to hear that.
Yes, so as pedagogical leaders, I feel that teachers, principals are like scientists, you know, constantly they're looking for ideas, constantly they're rooting to see how best they can reach every learner in the classroom. So changing the dynamism of the classrooms, changing the structure in which we deliver the lesson. There's so much that we can do by observing the teacher, mentoring the teacher, coaching the teacher. Thereby, we can improve their performance. Because the teachers already have so much within them. Appreciating that and following the teacher and allowing the teacher also to shadow other teachers who are doing as a very good performance performers inside the system, inside the school system. I feel we can build their performance. Yes.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. So the fact that you have kind of touched upon the principal as a pedagogical leader. So can we not rechristen the teacher as an instructional designer or a design thinker, the topic that Sir spoke about this morning? So if we start looking at teachers as designers of that classroom, the 40-minute of power-packed performance, I think that is where a lot of magic will also lie, right? So Miss Roopa Arun, right? A question to you. The teacher is today being called a guide by the side or a facilitator. What do you think she should facilitate?
Thank you so much. And I think this is one of my favorite questions. It's been a very, very dear thing to me to focus on how do you facilitate the class. I think there are two things that we need to keep in mind. First and foremost, I would like to just take a minute to talk about how the current education system came about and what I have read about it and what my observations have been. That when we missed the industrialization of our, the process of how the country developed, I think the industrial revolution that we missed, that's the time the British education came into focus. What was essentially done was that the education system was done in a very systematic, it was following a chain supply kind of a method. You do this first, you do this second, you do this third, you do that fourth. And there were instructions to that effect that was being given, which was followed almost until lately. So we need to, first of all, move away from that instruction-based education. Because in the fourth industrial revolution, I think we are moving towards AI and robotics, where a lot of things are being done by the machine. And we are going to have this entire generation of people, students, coming into that area when they are going to be employable. So if you look at the gap that exists with the instruction mode of teaching and the way that the children have to learn, I think there has to be a change there. What could be suggested is to become a facilitator, that we adopt and follow the Bloom's taxonomy very well in the classrooms. That means we adopt a level-based teaching, which takes the children to different levels of, or being able to understand what are the things in a particular area or topic that I need to memorize, what are the things where I can analyze, and how do I analyze. The concept of how a child answers a why question is never done. But a why question is given where the child is expected to memorize and answer. How do I solve a how problem? How do I look at the problem-solving skills and how do I solve it is not taught, but instead a how question is given and we are expected to, or the students are expected to answer that. I think our questioning patterns have been the same. Just like how Sir had mentioned in the earlier, the kind of questions that we ask has not changed. So that's the reason why many schools follow sample question papers and get into the process of instructional-based teaching even now. So as long as you're instructing, you tend to remain a teacher. The moment you want to facilitate, you have to bring in, as the policy says, self-learning, peer learning, and collaborative skills into picture. So if you have to bring in the self-learning, you have to aid the child in terms of being able to read and comprehend. If you want to bring in peer learning, the child should be a very good self-learner, being able to comprehend and understand, and then is able to apply it and teach each other. Lastly, of course, collaborative skills, where the child is able to evaluate what is good in the student next to me, and is able to take help of that, and is able to analyze himself and say what is his strength and bring it to the forefront.
So am I hearing that give the student the agency? The learner gets the agency?
Yes, you have to be able to teach them how to learn. I think how to learn is one phrase that the National Education Policy is constantly talking about. So if we are able to teach them how to learn, how to do the what, where, when, why, and how, instead of just giving the answers for it and saying, now memorize.
And anytime learning, everywhere learning.
Absolutely, everything falls into place. So I think that is where we should be taking our things ahead in terms of being a facilitator. Facilitator is important because you're giving the general direction in terms of analyzing what is the ability of the child and giving him the roadmap of where lies his strength. I think that would make the whole difference of being a facilitator rather than just being a teacher. Thank you.
Thank you, Roopa. So, Ms. Vamsheepriya, so that was a very interesting aspect brought out by Ms. Roopa. So can we expect these learners of tomorrow to challenge the teachers to bring out better teacher competencies? Are we understanding that these children are challenging us to be more competent? What is your take on this?
Thank you so much. First of all, my humble pranams to all of you here, Gurubhyo Namaha, and my humble pranams to my guide and mentor, Vasanthi ma'am, who is here. Thank you, Chennai Sahodya, for having me here, and Karadi Path also. Thank you so very much. Well, before I proceed with the question, I think we are all sitting here to debrief Bala sir, who gave us so much of information. The competencies that he has raised, I think I can compartmentalize into three, namely the field competencies. When I say the field competencies, it's about the teacher, the system, the management, how competent they are to probably make that happen in a classroom and to see it through their micro eyes as well as macro eyes. The second one I would say is pedagogical competencies, as ma'am brought it up. And lastly, it is lifelong learning competency. I think that's what NEP is also talking about, and life skills is also focusing about. If I have to think about the challenges which students can portray right in front of the teachers or probably stakeholders or the institution itself, coming back to my panel speaker who just mentioned, it is how the revolution has occurred right from the industrial revolution where it started to institutional revolution. We are right now in an era of institutional revolution where a lot of changes should be accepted. I do, you do, we do. I think that should be the strong motive which we pass it on to the children, and then there won't be any challenges which remain as challenges in a pronounced manner, but rather it becomes something which we can disseminate in the school and acceptance. Secondly, I would feel we need to be co-learners in front of learners. And our learners are our students, potential learners who are in front of us. So I become a co-learner with no such bias thought. As Sir mentioned, we are not experts in classroom, we learn it together. And that can happen with formal, informal, and non-formal discussions. Just to bring it to the point of discussion here, I've been with my guide mentor from last evening. We've spent good quality time, 2 hours, and I still feel we've not reached there what we can convey. It is how am I as a Sthita Prajna able to balance with all the competencies. be it my emotional competency, be it my communication competency, or be it my learning competencies or teaching competencies, where am I? Is a big question to me as a leader. The leader in me says, first I need to empower myself, then I can receive that empowerment from my children, because I go to a next level of appreciation and get down from my expert level. So I can understand because we remain in the same pace then. That is how I would feel.
And so if I may interrupt here,
yes.
So going back to the original question, is the child of today, the new age learner, dictating expectations of teacher competencies?
Do you use a strong word, dictating, there? That is the first question that we need to think. Is that
driving? So is it not the, what I really want to say is, has not the time come yesterday that we should have jumped into the new role?
I think there the perception matters, right? Because if, like, when we go as resource person, I'm a resource person for CBSE, there are a couple of times where participants will not accept what you're trying to say. And they may start questioning, and they are my co-learners, as simple as children in my class. So obviously, when I am on the dais and when I'm taking over, I cannot accept that as dictating. I need to see from their angle what they're thinking and breaking it down, and I call that as analyzing. So if you start analyzing what they are thinking, then there won't be anything called as challenge. Maybe we can co-construct or come to a conclusion together.
All right. So maybe we can reuse another word, say they are driving teacher competencies?
True. Yes.
Yes, because today if I have to stand in my classroom with a new age learner, I need to be absolutely updated in my skills, right?
Sure.
In how I am conducting my classroom, how I am carrying out the 40 minutes of classroom transaction.
Very right.
Yeah.
So I think you are right there. Maybe the right word used is a driving force. Yes, without them, let's get into the certifications that we have. A teacher with a B.Ed, for example, she stands in front of the children unless until they interact. I don't think there is a driving force for the teacher to have that full satisfaction of what she is rendered in a classroom. So it's a child who forces her, maybe a child at home.
Motivation.
Yes. And it may not be only in a classroom scenario. Getting back to the NEP, when we are talking about the natal age, it begins from home as well, because parenting also does not get tutored. It is something, it's an experience that we both bond together and grow together. So there's a challenge within and there's a driving force. So as Sir mentioned, it can catalyze any kind of challenge.
All right.
Thank you.
So thank you, Vamsheepriya ma'am. So we have kind of set the stage to understand, all of us understand what teacher competencies mean to translate this lofty vision of NEP 2020 into the reality that we want to see happen at the ground level. I have a question for all of you. And if we may run the poll question, I would like to get feedback from each one of you on what you think about the criticality of this element of teacher competencies. Can we have the poll question, please? Mentimeter. So, the first question, is the profile of the teacher going to be replaced with a newer one? You agree? Or you say it's too early to say? Or you disagree? I can see the blue bar going up. It is okay, like ma'am said. Everybody's at a different level. So there are people who disagree also. So the next question, how soon do you think this change will happen? All right, so here we see 27 responses for very soon, and we have 65 responses from 5 years from now. So some of you are looking at getting some time to be able to build these competencies in your teachers. And the next question, please. In the future, let me rephrase, in the near future, the requirement of the numbers of teachers will go down drastically. the requirement of the numbers of teachers will go down drastically. Yeah. Here the red bar is growing. Yeah, there are 13 people who say it's too early to say whether the number of teachers will go down drastically. So these were 3 questions just to trigger some thinking in each one of us. And there are no right or wrong answers. We are just looking into the future to see how each one of us is perceiving the situation, whether today or 5 years from now or say 10 years from hence. So there are no right and wrong answers. I am only asking these questions so that all of us start looking into the future to say, am I going to be redundant? Do I need a new set of skills as a teacher? Do I need to kind of update, upskill, and reskill myself to be relevant to the children? Or finally, is technology going to take over and the number of teachers, the requirement may go down, right? All answers are accepted and sacred. Thank you. So now I wish to request each one in the panel to pose one question to another member of the panel, and that person you can choose the person you wish to pose the question to, or it can be an open question and anybody can offer to respond to that question.
So I wish to ask this question to Dr. Vasanthi Thiagarajan. So Madam has started her career long before we all came into the profession. So she has seen a number of changes. She has worked with CBSE and she has seen several changes, like policy changes, and now we are left with NEP. So, but till today, Madam happens to be a very relevant teacher for this age as well. So I want Ma'am to share her wisdom with her on how you're keeping track of all the change in generation. Because now if I compare myself, the children who are even in our school, my age with the children who are there in the school, I feel sometimes I'm far from them and they are going, they want to take up so much, which sometimes I feel I'm not ready, but children are having a different perception about even coming to school, learning. One incident happened in school. They were quite noisy in one particular class, and a coordinator wanted to kind of bring in a change in them, and they said, since all of you are so loud and noisy, can we send the teacher out? And you can all manage the classroom. She thought they will ask her for excuse in 4th standard. They said, yes, she can go, we'll manage the classroom. So this question that she has already raised here, will teachers be replaced? So in 4th standard, they themselves said, I can do English, I can teach mathematics, and I can teach science. I'll do it like this. We'll go to the park and learn. So they had their own kind of references. And last month, the Tamil teacher was sitting in the bus when the children are having a discussion, if I become a principal. That's a conversation they are having in the bus. They say that if that particular student is going to become a principal, she'll not have teachers in the school at all. Okay? So this is, sometimes I feel the experiences that we have in our school with children. So my experience is only from children, and Madam here has got very many number of years of experience, and she's seen learners from my age, I'm sure, and now she's sitting with the newest learner in the classroom, and Madam happens to be a very relevant teacher for all these ages, and I want Ma'am to share her wisdom.
Thank you, Hamsa. Basically, I strongly believe in learner empowerment. I still teach. I started teaching literature, and many of my children who have left the school, when they come back, they greet me with the frog and the nightingale narration and say, ma'am, you brought the whole thing alive. I go to kindergarten, I demonstrate the hungry caterpillar, and all the little children start reacting. It's because probably I have that passion for teaching and learning, more importantly. When I talk to my children, more than what I do is I observe the children around the class. And I tell my teachers the example of the Prime Minister who has one security guard behind him. So what does that guy do? He's going around and seeing audience changes, right, to protect him. Teachers have to go around and the eyes have to travel just to see whether there's one child who's looking a little vacant, then there's something wrong. And therefore the challenge is, how do those 40 children get engaged? the teacher has to plan very well. Today there are so many pedagogies we can use, and rehearsal is very, very important. I do rehearsals before my training because I believe I need to respect learners who are coming there to listen to me. I teach life skills right now for 9, 10, 11, 12. Stopped my literature and went into life skills. I've designed my own life skill program for the school. And if I don't go to the class 1 week, my children come back, what happened? We missed you last week. To me, that is an indicator that there is a contribution I'm making to my kids. So what am I doing? Am I making a change? So this is where when we designed the experiential learning handbook, I think Lakshmi Prabha, all of us are the first ones who launched it for CBSE. It's very important to know, having an experience and reflecting on an experience is important. Right now we are all having an experience, but this is not experiential learning. We need to understand that experiential learning is learning from my experience, reflecting on it, maybe bringing a change. So I bring that into all school practices across from lower kindergarten to 12th. The teacher's agenda or session will have 10 minutes reflection time. So children have to reflect and they have to say what was good for them, not so okay for them. And that gives the importance to the experience that they have. So it's not experiential learning as a structured one, we go to the garden, look at the leaves, fine. But experiential learning is the learning that's happening every time the teacher is providing that experience.
So ma'am, your question to the panelists.
So that's my answer to what Hamsa asked. My question is, we spend a lot of time, I want to ask sir also. There is one CBSE mandate on professional development. So a lot of CPD is done, right? So many per year and all that. The second aspect is, we are being actually stormed with the new pedagogies all the time. To a new teacher, this could be very overwhelming. To the principal also, to sustain the known pedagogies, to bring in the change with the new ones that are coming in, and ensuring that everyone is on board and tracking. Otherwise, you know, a one-shot training is not an answer to professional development. So that's my concern. I'm actually addressing sir more than anybody. And anyone in the panel can answer, or I want his answer. How do we sustain the old and still bring in the new? And is it okay that he can answer for me?
I have no options. Well, I think basically what you need to look at, this point actually was discussed last week. I don't know how many of the people are part of this ICSL Friday at 5 meeting. Very good discussions go on. And last week we had a very interesting session attended by over 100 principals on teacher motivation. Basically, every teacher needs 2 types of motivation: intrinsic motivation, extrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation could come in terms of our appreciation, in terms of other things over there. But the intrinsic motivation is a psychological thing that has to come. And that can come only when a teacher is recognized, appreciated, and motivated. More than that, the teacher needs to be respected. One of the things that happened in that particular meeting was a large number of principals admitted that teachers don't get that kind of respect that they need to get for what they do. If you don't respect the teacher, the children will not respect the teacher. That's one of the things. So when you talked about, a young teacher who has just joined over there, you don't have a magic wand to change things overnight. You cannot compare them with that. But every new teacher comes with certain new competencies, new capabilities. And therefore, what you need to identify is, identify that, use them to, demonstrate those competencies and tell them that you have now to learn in a reverse manner. See, osmosis, what do you call it, is a two-way process over here. A number of teachers will do very well, provided you respect them, you recognize them, and you say, good job. And one word is sufficient for them to transfer. But if you are going to start in your authority and say, well, I have 40 years of experience, and you don't know, I think you kill the spirit of the teacher. To me, that's more important.
Thank you so much, sir. Just wanted to share with others that what we've done for this teacher motivation in my school for this pedagogical development, we introduced the Kaizen Awards for our teachers. And I told them, Doesn't matter what you do. A very small change that you brought about that is impactful on the class. Try it out. And I found and we give them a cash award also. And in front of the whole school, they come, they speak about it. It gives a wonderful feeling. And we started everyone is now trying out something new or the other. And it's not new for the sake of new that makes an impact. It could be very tiny ones. Kaizens are all about tiny changes, not huge ones. So they're very, teacher friendly. You work on a Kaizen, tell everyone, try it out. I tried out many and showed them and said, you all try out now. And very small things, it's working very well. I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
I want to add on to what you had asked and what Sir had expressed, ma'am. I definitely think I have a slightly different opinion on this. I think we are at that moment where we need to really, as Sir said, shake ourselves out of the coma and come out of it. I think this would be the moment where we could have some kind of good stress coming in and playing its role. What I mean to say is, forget about the pedagogies and the kind of instructional methods that we followed all these years. Clearly, it is proven it is not working. So why not we take the step ahead and actually emphasize on the new pedagogical methods and adopt them as early as we can, so that that particular question which said 5 years from now is when they see the role changing, I think should happen immediately.
It should start from now, not 5 years.
I think I just have
Should have
one
started
more.
yesterday. Yes, Vamsheepriya, your question, ma'am.
When it comes to teacher competencies, we actually think about communication competency, which is very important. Keeping this in mind, I would like to keep this question open to all of you, and especially I would really require inputs from everybody because it is impactful for my personal growth as well. See, when I'm thinking about para-language, communication and the para-language, how have we grown up? We've been growing up talking to the dolls. There comes a lot of affective domain, and there's a lot of feelings that we express and probably make it very submissive within us also. And once it bottles up, we show it up in the form of aggression or probably frustration. And teachers are the most frustrated lot. So keeping AI in mind, augmented reality coming up, robotics coming up, and the question which is being raised in the Mentimeter, keeping all this technology in mind, I just wanted to know what is mastery in terms of mastery in communication competency, considering the para-language. Because ma'am started off with attitudes, feelings, emotions, values, which is all a part of our affective domain. And ma'am also mentioned that Bloom's taxonomy is in. So I just would like all my panel members to add on to it. So what extent is mastery, a mastery in para-language, and raising the communication competency in a teacher? Because she obviously cannot stand back in a classroom with a lot of emotions bottled up within herself. She has to bring it up, and taking the leader in me, I would like to see a win-win conversation happening with the child, because sir also mentioned, I need to be happy before I make my class happy. Over
A
to my
small
panel
point here, I
members.
would like to start with a small thing. Teachers need a lot of support. We need a very sensitive management and a very sensitive school head who understands all that the teacher is going through, right? So we need, a very important question, because we are here, a group of school leaders, owners, and pedagogical leaders and principals here. We have to identify and say that this profession needs to be granted the status of a big profession placed on a pedestal in the society. That's number one. Number two, we have to lend a lot of respect and credibility to the teacher so that she comes to the classroom feeling that I am doing a very important job. I am touching the future of this country. I'm touching the future of the family. I'm touching the future of the society. So if I'm able to kind of create this kind of impact in my parent community, in my student community, and my management supports me, I think 50% of the battle would be won. If there's anybody else who wishes to take this conversation forward. Yes, Roopa, ma'am.
One rational point which I would like to contribute. I think as managements or school owners, one thing that has to constantly bother them or should be something that they think about on a daily basis. How much time am I giving my teacher to equip herself to be a future teacher? How much time am I giving? Constantly, what I have normally seen is what I'm sharing. This is perhaps my view. Perhaps this is not exactly how it is in most schools. If you have a teacher, she's typically given about 4 sections to teach a day or 4 sections to handle. Over and above that, if she's present in the school, she would be given substitution classes when somebody else is unwell or is not present in the school. When she goes back home, she has a family to take care. So how much time within the school hours of her profession? In every other profession, they have a time where they are upgrading themselves, they are upskilling themselves. How much time do we give the teachers? In the process of extracting more from lesser number of teachers, which obviously makes economic sense to the person who owns the school, do they really invest time in building the skills of the teachers? If that could be done, I think that will give a lot of solution to most of the things that we are facing. Where I assume that as a principal, you perhaps, I'm talking as somebody who has been a principal and 2 people who are principals at this moment. It's that, you would have seen that image, the crab and the frog, the crane and the frog. The frog holding the claws of the crane. Yes, and the crane kind of, flying away with the, frog. So it's a situation where you don't know who is holding who accountable for these things. If that could be made understood, if we could have a sessions for school managements to tell them how important it is for these teachers to upgrade themselves, perhaps they would have never been in the situation that they are in today. Because the rest of the world is progressing. Why is it that we are having an issue? I think that's something that we should look at.
Yeah.
So ma'am is asking how school managements are taking care of the professional development qualification of teachers. Yeah.
Sorry for the interruption. I just want to make 2 points. One, you are talking about mastery of this one. Vasanthi has been with Howard Gardner. Howard Gardner talks about acquiring mastery takes a period of 10 years. Right? By 10 years only, you attain the level of mastery. But what happens is with the knowledge dynamics, by the time you get to that mastery level, the knowledge is already outdated. So, to me, when you talk of the learning curve, there is no position in the learning curve which is called a position of mastery. Right? Even a mastery person defined as master becomes a learner over a period of time. I think, therefore, we should be very careful using that one, number 2. I love the point that you said about teachers getting more periods free and then learning that. That's a very fantastic and ideal concept, provided that the schools are able to give them what required. You see, they go to the staff room and it becomes a gossip house, right? Unless you provide the learning environment in the school for them to do that. 99.9% of the schools don't have any learning environment for the teachers, right? Do you have a learning center in the school? Do you have a research center in the school where do you identify 1 or 2 people and a number of things could be done? We have not applied. We are running in routine and preparing for the exam. Therefore, I think your point is well taken with a note that the schools need to provide a learning center and a research center for the teachers. Thank you.
Ma'am, I'll continue to what sir says. So I come from a management. We're very, very conscious about the professional development of teachers in our school. And during the week as well, we do have time. We call it as in-house. And in this in-house, we have schedules already prepared on what we are going to train ourselves. And we also close our school ahead of time. Like in April, we close. And teachers go through kind of close to 3 weeks of training in the month of April. And we also come into training. We collect our training for the year and we get into teaching. So I must tell you that we are here as a management, supporting the teachers' well-being and ensuring that, most of us are women working in our school. And we know school is a very important place, and home is also a very important institution where the teacher must also go back home and give her full attention and her time for the family members. So I'm very careful.
No, this is perfectly fine. I was generically talking. So generically, across, if this is the vision that they have, I think we are on the right path then.
I just want to close very quickly because of the
I have
time.
to close the session.
Yeah,
I have heard the buzzer a couple of times.
Just want to add one point on this. It's about the teacher. I think I'm also a correspondent founder of my school. The top priority for me is my teacher and her family. So if a teacher says, I can't come for 10 days, I say, yes, you just take off. But in the beginning of the year, we negotiate with all that we are there to support each other. And sometimes somebody will have to do other people's job. Maybe when you're not okay, somebody will do it. So when the mind is ready that I can support, I can help, I think that is half the battle won. The second thing is about the workloads. We make it very transparent. One team sits on it, the work allotment. And when somebody is absent, it is not that, another teacher will go, the one who's taking a core subject at least. We enable children to go for other subjects. They can go for games which they love. They can go to the library and read. But we ensure that unless there's a long absence, then somebody comes voluntarily and supports. Otherwise, the psyche is
Vasanthi
that
ma'am, I need to close in the interest of time.
Thank
I'm
you.
interrupting.
Just wanted to add on because a very vital point that teachers are stressed everywhere. Thank you.
Yeah. To sum up the conversation and to leave a few points for us to ponder, the responsibility of the management to lend professionalism to the profession of teaching. It is a huge, huge responsibility which rests with the management. Also to offer professional salaries. Are we willing to offer professional salaries to our teachers and raise the talent level and raise the bar of the classroom transaction so that NEP 2020 gets delivered in its right spirit, in its letter and in its spirit? That's one aspect. How many of us as principals are leaders and not managers, right? Many of us are constant. I do not blame the principals. We have a bus problem. It comes to the table of the principal. We have a child not well, and it's gone to the infirmary. Again, the problem comes to the table of the principal. There is a fight outside between two auxiliary staff members, and again, the problem comes to the table of the principal. Where is the principal placing her time and energy? Is she working for the pedagogical development of her teachers? And are her sites trained inside the classrooms to see what is happening to the classroom transaction on a day-to-day basis? I think these are some of the questions I want to leave us with. It's not that we are doing bad, but we can surely do way better than what we are doing today. And having said this, I wish to place the mic now with the audience, and I will take 2 audience questions, and you can ask your question of any of our panelists. 2 questions I would like to take from the audience.
Actually, my question is to all the panel members, because I feel you are all really learned and with so much of experience. This question actually came to me because I was interacting with children and overheard their conversation in a group. So most of the grown-up kids, especially those in the adolescence, they say they feel that they can learn well at home on their own, because if all the information is there on the computers and they really learn well from there, and school has actually become a place to socialize for them. And when they come to the school, because there is a lot of generation gap already in the mindset of the teachers and the students, what we feel is morally not right, may be morally right according to them. So because of this generation gap, how far do you think moral policing should be there in the school? Because children say, why should we not be allowed to interact within the school? Because the only way for the teachers is to tell them, don't speak to each other, if it is a co-ed school. Yes, please.
Thank you, ma'am. With the consent of the panelists, can I just go ahead? See, when we think about competencies, we are limiting our competency levels to a certain extent. There's something called, as Sir very well brought about, there's a cultural competency also. Each school is different. That's what Sir explained to us, or probably delivered the message in the morning. There is something called a social cultural competency. Some children, they're not open to public. They do not know what is called as PR or people management skills. What are we trying to develop in school? Group discussions are to make that dynamism possible. So the teachers need to be open, especially after COVID. Children are not coming to classrooms for knowledge gaining, but they're coming for knowledge assimilation. I think once we accept this, the socio-cultural competency is developed, and there is learning competency, which will be exponential. This is, I hope I've answered, and if my panelists would like to.
Yeah, I'll just take that question with the adolescents that she spoke about, ma'am spoke about. There are 2 things I just want to talk about, just trust and decision-making skills. with that group of adolescents, we all underwent that age, you need to trust them. How do you trust them? You have to demonstrate trust. You have to believe what they tell you. You can't go by your feelings at that point of time. The second aspect, which is very important, is teaching our children decision-making skills. It's not just about group discussion, the girl-boy relationship. It's all about decisions on tobacco, on drugs, on so many other things. And just to state an example, we had 12th standard children, 10th asking questions on contraceptives and this and that. The teacher had to just talk without batting an eyelid, and it's all about not giggling about it. We're not teenagers to giggle. So if you can trust your children and talk to them, they start respecting you for the trust. The second thing is teach them the importance of decision making. It's not just about contraceptives, why it is important to enter a relationship, what happens, the emotional trauma if it breaks down. So many things have to be exposed to children, and if these two things happen, I think children will be safe. Thank you.
One more question from the audience. I can see a hand raised there.
I was listening to the whole discussion on teacher training, evolution, all that. Don't you think that it is a dynamic process? It is not that today 50 hours of training is going to make a better teacher. Yes, exposure to something is definitely required. But I think this is open to the panel, where I would think after, and I'm sure many in the audience have had many years of experience. And what happens is that as we grow with the institution, we also grow in our ideas and our methodology. And it's an automatic, dynamic process. It happens naturally. Yes, if we focus on it for new teachers, I understand that a lot of learning will happen. But why is it that we are, looking at something that is so natural a process as being forced on a teacher?
So if I may start the response to this question, 50 hours I think is just a figure out there to make sure that some kind of continuous professional development is happening in all the schools. So it applies for principals, it applies for teachers, it applies for anybody who is. So the idea here, I think, in spirit, if I were to look at it, it's talking about being lifelong learners ourselves. Hence, this is my thought on your question, why are we forcing it down? I do not think, it is a manner in which you carry out this conversation with the teachers, how continuous professional development is very important for them to stay relevant and be engaging in the classroom and be, still endearing to the child today who has very fashionable role models outside. Every YouTuber is a child's dream. If you see they're speaking lively language, they're speaking in the jargon of the child. Not that we need to copy that, but my point is every teacher has to constantly update herself, reskill, upskill in order to be relevant inside the classroom. And hence some amount of professional development has to happen around the year. And like you said, it need not be forced, but it should be a part of the process. This is what I feel.
Ma'am, if I can take it up. I would like to articulate like this. A cooker, which is, rice placed in a cooker. We say after 4 whistles, we need to put it off. That 4 is just a number because we know if we have soaked it with less water, at 3 whistles, it becomes, the way you want it. And maybe in the 5th whistle, it will become very soft. So that is a benchmark which the institutions are supposed to follow. But certainly we all know and accept it is not a roadmap for something called as learning competency.
I just totally endorse with what Vamshi ma'am said. It is not the number matters. If, after 50 hours of training, if no follow-up, no implementation is done, there is no use of teacher being trained 50 hours. So that is very important. See, it is only a guidelines to be given by the board to follow. To just give a professional, continuous professional development is being given in the school. We have freedom to give how much ever you want, and that would, yes, I do accept that we as experienced teachers are there, only the new ones, and we also as experienced need to update our knowledge to suit the present day trend. That is what I would add on to what Vamshi said, in fact. Yeah, it's a dynamic, we do accept it is a dynamic process, but yes.
is that today there are n number of videos on how to make, say, vegetable biryani. And many of us learn to cook without someone telling us you use 1 tumbler of water, half a kg, you use 100 grams of this, 25 grams of that. And now we end up making a repetitive vegetable biryani, which tastes identical. But rather, used your own creativity, used your own intelligence, used your own imagination, the evolution that will take place is much superior to what a repetitive process or a rote learning can lead to, I think is what.
Training is a statistical, institutional ceremony to be performed by bureaucratic decisions. Learning is optional. Right? The fact that you have gone for 50 hours doesn't mean you have learned. You are present. Being present, learning are entirely different. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's kind of giving an opportunity for teachers to be trained and developed on the job. With this, the bell has rung again. Thank you so much for joining in, being a wonderful audience and pitching in. And thank you, panelists, for the wonderful dialogue, conversation that we have this morning.
Thank you all very much. I want to thank Mr. Vishwanath and the Karadi Path team for taking care of us so well, supporting, and the Chennai Sahodaya, which is like family for me. We've done so much of our training programs together. Thank you, Chennai Sahodaya, for inviting me from Hosur, and all the principals who are here, many of whom I know very personally. Thank you all very much for giving us this wonderful opportunity. Thank you for wonderful moderation. It was good. Thank you.